Welcome to John's Maths Book. In this video, we're going to be looking at fractional exponents. So what do we mean by fractional exponents? Fractional exponents express powers and roots in one expression. So here we have x to the power of 1 divided by n. This means find the nth root of x, or it can be written as this. X to the power of m divided by n. This means find the nth root of x to the power of m, or written as this. Now let's take a look at some examples of fractional exponents and how they work. So let's, as our first example, look at 9 to the power of a half. So this means find the second root of 9 to the power of 1. So this is effectively the square root of 9 to the power of 1. Now that is the square root of 9. Now we know that the square root of 9 is 3, so that equals 3. In our next example, let's take a look at 8 to the power of a third. So we know that this is the third root of 8 to the power of 1. So that can be written as the cubed root of 8 to the power of 1. Now we know that 8 to the power of 1 is just 8. So this is equal to the cubed root of 8. Now 8 is a perfect cube, so the cube root of 8 is 2. And now let's look at a different example. Let's look at 2 to the power of 6 over 2. Now I know that that can be simplified as 3, but for this example, let's just take a look at how it'll work. So that means find the second root of 2 to the power of 6. So that is the second root. So that's the square root of 2 to the power of 6, which is equal to the square root. 2 to the power of 6 is 64. And we know that the square root of 64 is 8. Now let's look at some examples of negative fractional exponents. So in our first example, we're going to look at 9 to the power of minus a half. So when we're looking at negative exponents, we're always looking at 1 divided by. So that equals 1 divided by the second root of 9 to the power of 1. So that in effect is the square root of 9 to the power of 1. So that is 1 divided by, now we know 9 to the power of 1 is 9, so this, and we know that 9 is a perfect square, so the square root of 9 is 3. So that is 1/3. So now let's look at, for our next example, 8 to the power of minus 1/3. So this says find the third root of 8 to the power of 1. And as it's a negative exponent, we need to have 1 divided by that. So 1 divided by, so the third root is a cube root of 8 to the power of 1. So that's 1 divided by Now we know 8 to the power of 1 is 8. And we know that 8 is a perfect cube. So the cube root of 8 is 2. So the answer is a half. So now let's look at, for our third example, 2 to the power of minus 6 divided by 2. So this is saying find the second root of 2 to the power of 6. And as it's a negative exponent, it means 1 divided by. So it's 1 divided by the square root of 2 to the power of 6. So that is 1 divided by the square root. 2 to the power of 6 is 64. So the square root of 64, 64 is a perfect square. So the square root of 64 is 8. So that's 1 divided by 8. So that gives 1/8. So for exercise number 1, let's take a look at 4 to the power of a half. So pause the video now and see if you can work out the answer. So hopefully you got the answer. So 4 to the power of half means find the second root of 4 to the power of 1. So that is find the square root of 4 to the power of 1. 4 to the power of 1 is 4. So that is find the square root of 4. Now 4 is a perfect square. So the square root of 4 is 2. For exercise number 2, let's look at 2 to the power of 4 divided by 2. So pause the video now and see if you can work out the answer. So hopefully you got the answer. So this is saying find the second root of 2 to the power of 4. So that is the same as saying find the second root, which is the square root of 2 to the power of 4, which is saying find the square root. Now we know that 2 to the power of 4 is 16. And 16 is a perfect square. So the square root of 16 is 4. For exercise number 3, let's see if we can work out what 4 to the power of a minus half is. So pause the video now and see if you can work out the answer. So hopefully you got the answer. So in this case, we've got a negative exponent. So that means 1 divided by. And then 4 to the power of a half would be find the second root of 4 to the power of 1. So that is effectively the square root of 4 to the power of 1. So that is 1 divided by. Now we know that 4 to the power of 1 is 4. And we know that 4 is a perfect square. And we know that the square root of 4 is 2. So the answer to that is a half. For exercise number 4, let's work out what 2 to the power of minus 4 divided by 2 is. So pause the video now and see if you can work out the answer. Hopefully you got the answer. So this is saying find the second root of 2 to the power of 4. But because it's a negative exponent, it means 1 divided by that. So we have 1 divided by the second root, which is square root of 2 to the power of 4. and that equals 1 divided by the square root. So 2 to the power of 4 is 16, so that will be 16. And this is the square root of 16. Now we know that 16 is a perfect square. So the square root of 16 is a quarter, or sorry, the square root of 16 is 4. So the answer is 1 divided by 4, which is a quarter. That concludes this video on negative and positive fractional exponents. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.